When we hear the phrase comfort food, we many times think about the type of comfort food that comes in the winter, sitting in a chair under a cozy blanket and eating a big bowl of stew. But today we are going to talk about summer comfort food that will use up some of the things that I have and won't break the bank and are pretty easy to make. I hope you enjoy these recipes. Hi, I'm Bonita and I am early retired. I'm not old enough yet for Social Security. I'm living on a low income and I am living off of savings. I live in Kansas on a farm and I have a donkey. I have frugal videos all year round and I hope that you will join me this year as we share ways to save money and live our dreams. Last week, I did a video that had to do with some summer recipes when it's just so hot, nothing sounds good. Well, this week we are going to do some more summer recipes. I had a lot of people tell me they would like to see some more of that. So today I'm going to share with you some of the things we made this week with things that we already had that was pretty easy to make and used up some of the items that I was able to catch on a deal. Look at this great special that I caught. It was amazing. Sometimes you can catch green peppers on sale, but I caught these large colored peppers on sale for only $1 each. What a great deal. And then I found these half dozen eggs for 63 cents. That makes them only $1.26 a dozen. So I got 4 dozen. I decided to boil up a dozen of these eggs and peel them and make them into deviled eggs today. I think everybody makes them a little bit different, but here is my recipe. All I put in mine is mayonnaise and mustard and a little bit of sugar. I think the sugar is a secret ingredient. I put in about a tablespoon of sugar for this recipe with a dozen eggs. I put in a good dollop of mayo and a good squirt of mustard. I know people that put pickle relish in their deviled eggs, and I did this back in my 20s, but I've gone away from that. I find that I like this recipe so much better. Put in the comments, how do you make your deviled eggs? I have this tiny scoop and it works great for my deviled eggs. It also makes really tiny cookies if you want really tiny cookies, but I mainly just use it for deviled eggs. And then I sprinkle paprika over it, mainly just for pretty, not because I really think it has that much flavor, but it makes it very attractive. So this is one of our comfort foods this week. With the deviled eggs, I have a package of gluten-free hot dog buns that I caught on clearance. And my husband thought chili dogs sounded good, so we're going to grill those out. I had about a quarter of a pound of the hamburger and pork mixture that I bought that was ground. I put in a can of tomato sauce. I put in some dried kidney beans and some dried pinto beans and some of my homemade chili seasoning. I also added some frozen crushed tomatoes that I had in a baggie in the fridge, and you can't have chili without plenty of onion in there. And we are going to have chili dogs with our deviled eggs. And I showed you in one of my last videos that we found some green apples at my son's house when we were getting the lawnmower that fell off the tree. I make a really good green apple dessert. So I decided to make a green apple crisp today to go with our chili dogs and our deviled eggs. Some of the apples were really small, so by the time I got 6 cups of chopped apples, they were starting to turn a little brown. But trust me, when you bake them, it won't matter if they discolored while you were chopping them. This recipe is in my first cookbook of 50 frugal recipes when cooking on a budget that's in the description box below. It is 6 cups of cubed green apples, 1 1/4 cups of sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour. I used gluten-free, 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, a half of a teaspoon of cinnamon. I increased that just a little bit because I like cinnamon, a dash of salt, and a tablespoon of margarine or butter. And that's all that's going to go into the base of this. And then we're going to make the crisp topping for the top that is in my second Depression era cookbook that's listed below. And that recipe is 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar, 1/4 of softened butter or margarine, 1/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour, I used gluten-free, and 3/4 of a cup of oatmeal. We're going to mix that together, sprinkle it on top of our apples, and bake this uncovered for about 45 minutes at 425 degrees. This is so delicious. Talk about summer comfort food. So as you could see, none of those used expensive ingredients. It took a little bit of time to boil the eggs, peel the eggs, divide them, mix up the mixture. But with buying the eggs so cheap, they went a long ways and it didn't cost much at all with ingredients I already had on hand. I remember when deviled eggs used to be one of the cheapest things you could make for picnics or for carry-in meals. It's not so much that way today. Eggs have come down a lot, and this was a steal. So I thought, yes, we've got to have some deviled eggs. But also the apple crisp. I picked up those apples off of the ground, cut out the bad spots, left all the good ones on the tree for later, and made that out of discarded apples that had blown off the tree in our Kansas winds. So that cost hardly anything, just a little bit of flour and sugar and butter and oatmeal. Nothing. It was almost free. Just time to cut those apples up. And then that chili was with stuff I already had on hand. I bought those hot dog buns on clearance. It turned out great for pennies, and this will serve us a bunch of meals. So when you're looking around your house for things that you can make, think about what you can make. Maybe it'll take a little more time, but hardly any money to throw some of those really good summer dishes together that will bring everyone's appetite back. And we hear the term comfort food a lot. And comfort food's definition is actually food that provides consolation or a feeling of well being, typically any with a high sugar or other carb content and associated with childhood or home cooking. Now, I don't think comfort food has to necessarily have a high carb content. The way I look at comfort food is it's something that you really enjoy, something that you look forward to, something that you enjoy eating. And I know our green apple pie or green apple crisp, that is something I have made for years. I'm not a big pie maker. I love pie though, but the specialty that I've always made is green apple pie. I people ask me to make it. In fact, when we opened our grocery store, we did a fundraiser. I sold green apple pies out front of our grocery store. When my son went to a leadership conference in DC, I did a fundraiser on Main Street in our local town selling green apple pies. I took pre-orders for them, and I have done this several times, sold these green apple pies. So that happens to be my specialty. I love them. I think they are so much more flavorful than a red apple pie or a red apple dessert. I like red apples fresh, but I'm not crazy about red apple pie. There's just something about these green apples with their tartness, and you add a little bit more sugar that just makes them so much more delicious. And that is why I and my children and my community and neighbors find these green apple desserts to be comfort food. I grew up with green apple trees, and green apple trees are different than like your Granny Smith apples or some of those, they are really, really sour. And I would eat them growing up. And I remember my dad would say, "Don't eat too many or you will get a bellyache." And I found myself telling that to my children because they also grew up eating green apples and they would be so tart that you would just be like making a face when you ate them, but you still wanted them. They were so good. Let me know if you've ever had an actual green apple off of a green apple tree. Now, some of those apples, as you saw, they were like this big, and I would only get maybe 4 bites as I cut off around that tiny little core. And you would think if they were that tiny, they would be even more sour, but they weren't. I snitched a few while I was chopping, and they were perfect. They weren't any more sour. They weren't where they were tough or anything, even though they weren't fully grown. So I take advantage of things like that that fall off the tree. So often when we go to the grocery store, we only want the perfect apple because that's what we're used to getting. But when I grew up on the farm, we didn't waste any of that had fallen off the tree. We picked it up, we washed it, we cut out the bad spots, and we used it anyway. There was nothing wrong with that other than it had fallen off the tree. We don't spray our trees. We don't spray our garden in the front yard. So all of that is organic, which for me has even a bigger power punch of wanting to eat it fresh because I know there's no pesticides, there's nothing on this stuff. It's just sun and rain. Green apples also have a lower sugar content than red apples, which is why you have to add a little bit more sugar to them when you are baking them. So I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent about green apples, but that's why they are my comfort food because they are something from my childhood, from my children's childhood, and something that I still love today. In fact, I have my husband who has fallen in love with my green apple desserts as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video today. Let me know in the comments, what are some of your summer comfort foods? Thanks for watching today. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this, and I hope to see you in the next video.